it's Maryanne, and welcome to another episode of the Influential Nonprofit. From time to time, I come on solo and teach you some concepts and some techniques that I think can really help you up level your work. And I get inspired by these because I talk to people every day. My business is booming. I have tons of conversations with people. And some of the sometimes just themes naturally emerge about what people are struggling with right now. And this always gives me the inspiration for these episodes. So, what's been coming up for me right now, what I've been hearing a lot of is I'm putting a lot of energy out and I'm not getting a lot back for it. Or we try stuff and it doesn't go anywhere. Or I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel and I just keep going and going and going and I'm not really getting anywhere and it's exhausting. And that is pretty typical of any sort of new effort, new energy that you want to put out there, a campaign, an initiative, an idea, a program. Um, and sometimes you either stop and start, or you start and then it doesn't go anywhere and everybody sort of lose interest and everybody goes back to status quo. Okay. So I want to teach you a concept and then I'm going to this 5 phases of ideation. So of creating something new. I'm going to walk you through them and then I'm going to go back and show you where you could possibly be getting tripped up in this process. But I think helping you to understand the process first and then kind of walking you through where you could be struggling is going to be really helpful. So first, there's 5 phases to this, and Phase one is ideation, an idea. I have an idea. Let's do this. Let's put on a show. Let's have an event, whatever it is. Let's we need a capital campaign, whatever that thing is, that new thing, a new program, a new maybe approach to your social media, a new way of getting your donors involved, whatever new, that's your idea. Okay, phase 1, ideation. Phase 2, concentration and focus. Concentration and focus means that you have an idea and now you're putting it to action. The rubber meets the road. Let's get busy. Let's get this moving. In concentration and focus, that's devotion to activity, which means you really got to stay in it. When you stay in it, then you're going to hit 3, and 3 is momentum. Now, momentum, you're going to hit it because it's a wild ride. It's up, down. It's either feast or famine. Like you have a lot going on. Hey, you're bringing in a lot of money. Oh, whoa, not bringing in so much money. And so once you realize you're on that roller coaster, then you go to stage 4, which is stabilization. And stabilization means now you're developing the systems and the processes to keep whatever you're doing consistent. So instead of the up and down, we're creating sort of like a straight line up, right? Growing up. And stabilization is just so important because that's what keeps you out of the craziness of momentum. And then stage 5 is integration. And integration means I've been through all these 4 stages. And now I know at any point, the next idea we have, I know exactly what it would take to implement it from start to finish, right? From idea to keeping that idea in action for a long time. So let me go back to see and talk about where you get tripped up. Okay. So ideas. Number 1, ideation. We all have ideas. We have great ideas all the time. I have so many ideas. I'm a creator. I can always think of things. I never sit down at the computer and think, what should I write about today? What should I talk about today? I have a ton of ideas, and the people around you may have a ton of ideas too. And part of what we want to do is kind of filter those ideas so you're not just implementing everything people ask of you on their whim. We're doing it because it's strategic. So that's a conversation for another day, but let's just assume that there is a strategic reason for doing what you want to do, and you launch something. And let's say you're going to launch a new approach to your board members raising money. We're going to do some sort of training implementation to up level your board members' ability to support your fundraising. That's the idea. I'm just going to roll with it. So you go into phase 2, concentration and focus. So maybe the first phase of you're going to start calling board members and meeting with them, talking about how they want to contribute or whatever the plan is. That's when you start the activity. Now, where people get tripped up on phase 2 is a couple of ways. One is when people don't respond the exact way you want them to, you're like, wait, maybe, well, I can't even get meetings with my board members. Maybe this isn't a good idea. I'll go back to ideation. Or you're doing a lot of work and you're not getting a lot back for it. You're like, well, obviously, like, this is not doing anything for me. So I'll go back to ideation. It's very tempting when you're in phase two to stop, because the real kicker of phase two is you're going to have to put a lot more out than you get back. And I'm not saying that as like, oh, it's going to be really hard, or, that's that. I don't want to create that story. What the story I want to create is that it is important to stay devoted to your activity, because anything new takes time to grow. And sometimes we just don't allow for what we want to create to get the time and space it needs to really connect with people and grow. And sometimes we want those things to happen really quickly because, hey, we're really excited about this new idea. We would love for like our board members to have, to be more involved in fundraising. Well, I tried to put it together and then I gave them this training and nothing happened. So, okay, what else can we do? And then you go back to phase one. I'll give you an example of something in my life. When I started this podcast, before I started it, I went to this workshop and this woman was talking about, putting together a podcast. And she's like, yeah, you need at least 40 episodes before your podcast gets traction in the marketplace. And I'm like, 40? Like, because like, but I just created this. It's awesome. Why isn't everybody listening? I wanted like 5 episodes, like, why, because what we want is like certainty, and for the tension between what we created and for that creation to work or be successful to end. And so we tend to stop the creation because we don't want to be seen as creating something that's unsuccessful or not working. So we don't give it the time it needs to really grow. Most efforts are going to take a little more than you think they are to really happen. And that's not a bad thing. So my therapist calls these OSIs, which is opportunity to strengthen your intention. Other people use the word initiation. I'm always on the fence about that word, but either way, it's like, the universe will say like, we want, our board members to fundraise, but do you really want it? Do you really want it? Because it may be that you have to be more devoted than you thought to getting it. And yes, hey, sometimes it could just happen and that's awesome. More likely than not, it's going to take more devotion than you think in order to make that happen. That doesn't mean that the idea is bad. That doesn't mean that anything is wrong. It just means most things take more time and effort than you probably assumed up front, because phase one of ideation is that phase of possibility. Phase two is kind of the rubber meets the road, and that can cause to bring up feelings of insecurity, of guilt and shame, of anxiety, where we don't want to be seen as creating something that didn't work. So we shut down the creation and we go back to ideation. The pain that I see is people flipping back and forth between concentration and or sorry, between ideation and concentration and focus. They're just going back and forth and back and forth. Okay, new idea, implement that. That didn't work. New idea, implement that. That didn't work. And it's exhausting because you're always trying something new and you're not getting any traction. You're not getting anything back for it. The thing about phase two is devotion to activity. And that could be you having partners within your organization, that hold you accountable to making sure you stay in there. That could be that when barriers come up, instead of looking at that as a signal to stop, think about, okay, what is this telling me? How can I change my approach? You know, like I'm thinking about, like, I want my board members to raise more money. Okay, how am I showing up for them? How can I be of value to them in this situation? How can I raise my standards for what I want? How can I stay in this and be very, very devoted to seeing this happen and giving them the time they need to sort of get on board and come with me? Because what I see is if there's not an immediate response, then you're like, I tried, I just couldn't do it. So just take a deep breath and stay in it. Because if you stay in it, then you're going to hit 3, momentum, which is that up and down. And I'm going to tell you, once you're in momentum, you're going to know. So let's say it's like a social media effort that you want, and you're putting stuff out there and it's really not getting traction. And you're thinking, why are we doing this? This is really not getting traction. Like, no, I know I'm doing this, and I know if I keep doing this, eventually it will get traction, but it won't get traction if you stop 100%, right? You'll never get that board engaged if you stop the effort of the plan to engage them. So you have to keep going until you hit momentum. Then when you hit momentum, now the trick is stabilization. And stabilization has to do with systems and processes for consistent delivery and 100% transparency. This is exactly where I am right now. This is my theme for the year, is to create stabilization, stabilize to thrive. That's my thing for the year, putting systems and processes into place to allow me to show up in a very consistent way, and so that create consistency and how people move through the pipeline of working with me. And it's the same thing for you. How can you create consistency, like in your fundraising or in your marketing, in your board relationships, where now these are processes that are integrated into your organization? It's just a matter of what you do, and it just happens systematically and easily. That's when you get into stage 5, integration, because you can look back and be like, oh, hey, we did that. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to be in these phases and you're not going to realize you are until you sort of look over your shoulder and you're like, oh, wait, I think I'm in momentum. Oh, wait. The biggest thing I can tell you is most things don't work, not because it was a bad idea, because it wasn't given enough time and consistent devotion to activity to actually take hold. So knowing that if there's something we really want to see happen, it's going to take some concentration and focus, some faith and trust that what you're putting out there is going to actually come back to you. Sometimes it feels like in the beginning, I'm just doing a lot of stuff and nothing's happening. Now, the question I get a lot, which I understand, is how do I know when I should stop implementing an idea? And I would explore that a little bit, because underneath that question is, what's not being said is, what if this idea is bad and I'm wasting a lot of time on something that wasn't really going to work for us? And I hear that. And also, there's really failure, or the perceived failure, like something not working, is not a bad thing. Okay. It teaches you that you can actually go and try something and learn from it, rather than trying something and just stopping before there's even really lessons apparent to you. So there's no magic number, 3 months, 6 months, if you do this, if you do that. What I say to people is 95, I mean, I don't have stats on this, but this is what I believe, like probably 95% of the time things don't work because you stop before they get a chance. The other 5% of the time things don't work if you can say, we gave it everything we had, we delivered consistently, we really didn't move the needle in 3 to 6 months. That's when you can stop. But most people will say, did you give it everything you have? Did you show up consistently? Were you truly devoted to activity? You can say yes to those. Then you can say, okay, yeah, maybe this wasn't the right approach. And also, now we know. Oh, now we know, right? And now we've learned from that. But really don't worry about that. I feel like that's also what gets people tripped up, is because they're like, what if this doesn't work? And then I'm going to look bad, and maybe I'll just like stop it right now before it has a chance to reflect poorly on anyone. Um, and that's part of, our wiring as humans, to not feel guilt and shame, to not feel that that those triggering feelings of feeling like a failure, feeling like we're not good enough. Of course, as I'm recording this, the mail comes, because hey team, I'm just going to restart from the place where I talk about the question, because the mail just came and that was all the drama. So the question I get a lot is, how do I know when to stop? How do I know when an idea is not good? And that's a really important question on several levels, and I want to address it as such. First is, there's something to that question that's like, how do I know if it's a bad idea? So first of all, we're going to judge the idea as good or bad. And there's really no good or bad. Maybe that's getting a little meta for you, but it's just that you had an effort. Did it do what it is intended to do or not? But the underlying thing is like, what if I fail? Right? So what if I have an idea and it doesn't work? Well, what does that really mean? What if it didn't work? Well, then I would look bad. Well, what if you looked bad? Well, then I would want my board or my boss or whatever might not see me as so credible. What if they didn't see you as so credible? Like really exploring what you're afraid of feeling, because that question was rooted in a little bit of resistance. If I put myself out there, if I try something new and it doesn't work, where will that be harmful? And if your belief is that, yes, that would in the end be harmful to me, it's really it may be difficult for you to actually put your full effort into something, because you can always say, well, I didn't put my full effort in, so it didn't work. And that wasn't the merit of the idea. It's just like, we're just going to let it go. It's just going to die. You see what I'm saying? There's a difference there. Our perfectionism comes from a place of that our best efforts won't be enough. And so we tend to like hold back our best effort, because if we put it out there and it's not enough, whoa, that can be super triggering. So thinking about that, if we believe that everything happens for a reason, that this is happening for you, not to you, that like you believe that this is a good idea, that it's strategically aligned, that's going to benefit your organization, like all of those things, check, 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 then you go for it. You put 100% of yourself into it. If you can say, did we put 100% in? Did we deliver consistently? Did we, do everything we said we were going to do? And you say, yeah, didn't get any traction, didn't do what we wanted. Okay, then let's take a look. I would say at least 3 to 6 months. If I had to give a time, like like I said, 40 podcasts, like I would have thought, we tend to believe that things are going to happen a lot sooner because we're excited about the value of what we're bringing. And again, if people aren't connecting to it right away, that doesn't mean the idea doesn't have value. That just means people aren't connected to it yet. It's a whole different thing. And so there's some faith and trust that has to go on underneath. It's like, but I know if I stop, it's for sure not going to happen. So let's keep plugging away. Let's keep moving. Here's one thing that I love. One of my colleagues taught me this. I just love it. You polish over here to shine over here. So the fact that maybe your board outreach, you're connecting with your board member, you may not be getting like exactly what you want from them, but then all of a sudden you're having different conversations and other things are happening and you're really coming together as a team. So I'm just saying that sometimes you polish over here to shine over here. And sometimes like, oh, I'm going to send an email out and ask on my email list to give to this. Oh, nobody gave to this. Oh, what's wrong with that? Then all of a sudden something just drops in like you feel like from nowhere. I'm just saying like we sometimes believe that our efforts have a direct response when really all we're doing is like putting energy out and shifting the field around and just kind of stirring the pot. So even if your direct efforts aren't met, that doesn't mean that it's not working. And we tend to want to have oh, we did this and we got this response. And it's not always that clear. And that's really not how things actually work. And when we don't see a clear response, we're thinking, okay, that wasn't a very good idea. When actually it was doing something, it was shifting something. It just maybe wasn't shifting in the way that we intended, which is okay too. And I'm not saying just like throw yourself out there, put yourself everywhere. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying you got to give it time. You got to give devotion to activity. If it gets a little hard and starting to feel hard, knowing that that's just part of this process, that's just part of launching something new. And when you can get through that stage 2 and get to the momentum, then you have the happy problem of creating stabilization. But when most people get messed up is in that from phase 1 to phase 2. And and if you can say we put everything we had into it, we tried everything we could, we gave it 100% and it still didn't pay off. Okay, great. How can we readjust? How can we rethink? But there's really no bad ideas and there's really no failure or just only experience and lessons. That's the only way we learn is if we put ourselves out there. and we give it a shot and we just give it our all and see what happens. And releasing the ego, releasing that need to control the outcome and just letting flow back. And I'm just going to give you a quick story and then I'm going to wrap for today. So this was, pre-COVID a few years ago. My business was young. I was, calling people, hey, it's Maryanne. Here's what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. And one of my favorite people that I had worked with over the years, I called her and I let her know what I was doing and I didn't hear back. I kind of like, oh, a little disappointing, but I'm moving on. So a few months later, I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 months later, I was hosting a workshop and locally when you could do those things. And this woman came to my workshop who worked for the woman that I had called. Her name's Christine. I was like, Christine, hey, oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. I called your CEO and I never heard back. And she was like, oh my gosh, I know she is the biggest fan. She just loves you. She's got your book and we're so excited for what you're doing. And she really wanted me to come here today and learn from you and get inspired from you. I'm like, whoa. So in my head, that was a phone call that didn't really go anywhere, but really, I just hadn't gotten back to me yet. Right. I hadn't get and then I could have said, okay, I'm calling all these people. Nobody wants to work with me, but I was in devotion to activity. Like the only reason this won't work is because I stopped working it. And that is the focus that I had. And guess what? It came back to me and I realized that what I was doing was working and I was planting the seeds and they were growing. And marketing, fundraising, any kind of internal cultural shift like boards and fundraising, it takes time. You can't move a parked car. And also, I'm going to mix metaphors here. It's hard to move a parked car. So you just got to get into action. And also, change, it takes a time to turn the yacht around. Okay. And so anything like that, it's going to need some time. It's going to need some nurturing. It's going to need some devotion to actually make it work and grow. I hope this resonated with you and that maybe you can see some wisdom in how you can make your best efforts actually stick and create the change that you want to see. Because when that happens, it's so inspiring and it really fills you up and energizes you so that that you can go back and make that change. And if you're excited to talk to me more about the kind of coaching and training that I provide to help you lead yourself and others more effectively, go to influentialnonprofit.com. You can download your Uplevel Your Influence Starter Kit. That's filled with all kinds of cool stuff like these concepts that I'm sharing with you now so that you can start leading more effectively. And I am only an email away, Maryanne@maryannedersch.com. Shoot me an email if you want to talk more with me about how I could help you make the best out of your leadership and communication so you can get more done. And that's it for me, guys. I will see you next time on The Influential Nonprofit.